Ready, set, bet. Okay.
Ready, Set, Bet, and
Yes.
the app versus the I've never done a live a live what do you call that? Like a live host, I guess you
Live
could say,
host.
where
Yeah.
they're rolling the dice.
Yeah.
But it feels thematic because there's a like, oh, double sixes, number 12 is jumped in the lead.
Right.
And yeah, it's a good time. So
Yeah.
hello, board game rundown. This is Andrew, and uh, it is my honor to welcome Jamey Stegmaier to the podcast. Jamey has been one of my favorite game. What would you consider yourself, a developer, a designer? I'd say designer, right?
It's a little design, little development, little publishing, little of
Sure, a
each.
little bit of
Yeah.
both. But I mean, Jamey, I was posting on I don't post on Facebook much, but there have been countless hours spent around the table with so many of your games. I was saying I feel a little bit of imposter syndrome on Facebook that I get to actually interview you now that I'm part of the board game rundown, and so thank you for giving me a part of your day. I really appreciate
Oh,
it.
it's my pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity, and I can definitely relate to imposter syndrome. I feel that all the time.
Yeah, sure,
Yeah.
sure. We are just people at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we'll just move right past that. But um I want to just start by doing something fun. I've got eight one or the others here just to get to know you a little bit.
Okay.
Because you have so much content online. Not only do you do like Stonemaier games, but you also have your website where you talk about things that are not board game related. So I've got a couple
Yeah.
things here that are that will get our viewers to learn a little bit more about you. So let's just start. It's just one or the other.
Okay.
Cyberpunk or medieval?
Medieval.
Okay, good. Back to the Future or Star Wars?
Oh, that's a hard one.
Maybe I should
I
have saved
love
that one for last.
I love both. I love time travel fiction in general, but I've definitely seen Star Wars more, and so I'll go with Star Wars. Yeah.
Okay. The first Star Wars I ever saw was The Last Jedi, and I was like, that was awesome. I'm gonna go home and watch the original, and I was just falling asleep. So I had to let go of Star Wars because the fight between Darth Vader and that other old guy, it looked like two dudes in a nursing home with like their canes. I was like, this is what people were excited. But back then,
Yeah.
it was probably the most action-packed scene in movie history.
Yeah.
Um, coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Cream and sugar or black?
I used to be cream and sugar, but I now mostly drink black.
Okay, so you're trying to like extract the flavors from the beans. Okay. Okay, this one I was really excited about. Gently used first printing
Hmm.
or new in box collector's edition?
I would say gently used first printing. I back a lot of Kickstarter campaigns, and I usually just get like the normal version of it
Yeah, yeah.
because I just want to play the game. I don't need the fanciest version.
And yeah, I think a lot of us I think a lot of people in our realm, the Kickstarter crowd, I guess you could say, a lot of people
Yeah.
really only play these games once or twice anyway, and they
Yeah.
baby these games really well. So I kind of
Yeah.
agree with you there. This might draw a line between you and I, Apple or Android, or I guess I should say iOS or Android.
I I'm on a PC right now, but I have an
Okay,
iPhone, so I'm a little bit of both. I don't.
okay,
Yeah. So I think there's more iOS, Apple
for the
plus
everyday, but
for
the
the everyday.
practical.
Yeah.
Sure, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, Nintendo 64 or PlayStation 2.
Oh, definitely for me, Nintendo 64. I was in college from like 99 to 2003, and we played a lot of Mario Kart on N64 back then.
Sure.
What
There's
about
this
you?
guy.
Yeah.
Oh boy. So I was born in 90, so I
Okay.
had PlayStation 2 was around the time when like online gaming started to come to the consoles, and
Yeah.
I didn't have a PC that did a lot of internet capabilities. And so I'd have to go with PlayStation because there was this game called SOCOM that
Okay.
came out, and it was like a military tactical shooter, and me and my buddies just into the night every single night. Um, but I wanted to also include or a 2000 gaming PC, because there is like the Command
Oh,
and Conquer, the Age of Empire person out there who, you know, might be a might not have even done consoles altogether.
Yeah,
But
definitely my first gaming was done on PCs in high school, like games like
okay.
Heroes of Might and Magic, which I think recently just got a board game version of that game.
Oh, cool. Were you
Yeah,
ever into the Ultima series?
I'm not familiar with that one. No.
Oh, okay. It's just like they've got like 10, it's like 10 game series of like it's very medieval, very fantasy, so didn't
Okay.
know if you had heard of that one. All right, final question, and I think I know the answer to this one.
Okay.
But penalty kick shootout or golden goal in the FIFA World Cup?
Mm. Well, I like the question first. I played soccer growing up.
Yep.
I'm following the Women's
Same
World Cup right now. I love
same
soccer.
here.
Yeah, you
Same
played
here.
awesome. Um, and I believe that soccer used to have the golden goal. I don't think they do it
Correct.
all that much anymore. They've
Mhm.
added like the extra time where you get to play the full extra time period and then you go to penalty kicks.
Yep.
I like that. I don't know if I love the game ending in penalty kicks, but I like that it
Yeah,
doesn't end with a golden goal necessarily. They get to play out that full 30 minutes.
sure.
So I guess that's slightly penalty kicks. What about you? What do you prefer when you're watching a Women's World Cup game? Do you want it to end in penalty kicks or I
So
guess not a golden goal then?
I was
Okay,
a
you're a goal.
goalkeeper. I was a
Oh,
goalkeeper,
okay.
and, I've had my fair share of not only, like, I was on TV for the worst goal, in the city. I was,
Uh-huh.
like we had, like, our sister rival high school right down the road, and, they had a free kick, and they knew that I was a sophomore goalie, so they were like, "Alright,
Okay.
let's just try it." And they megged me from, like, midfield,
Oh.
which
Oh,
for
wow.
our viewers, that means you got it between my legs. So not only did they chip it, like, 40 yards, they scored a goal between my legs, and I literally fell on the ground, and I just planted my face into the ground, and I couldn't believe it. But I feel like penalty kicks are a little anticlimactic.
Yeah.
Um, like, there's a lot of hype, right, for each goal and each block, but for the goalkeeper, the glory is in the penalty kick, right? Because if you can
Yeah.
block a shot in the PK shootout, like, you are elevated to a status that cancels out the entire 90 minutes you were mostly just sitting there.
Yeah.
So, I think for the goalie, they would probably prefer a PK shootout because the amount of, fame that could come from a stop, but
Right.
I feel like a golden goal is a little bit more, it brings the conclusion to its more, fitting ending, I guess, because you 'cause you're
Yeah.
continuing to play soccer, you know?
Right.
I don't know.
Yes. Yeah. I wonder if they've ever tried a hybrid version where you like have a guaranteed plus 15 minutes, and then
Yep.
after that, if there's still a tie, it's golden goal. Eventually, the game has to end though, which is the tough part. You
Yeah.
can't have those guys out there, guys or girls out there for
E
3 hours. It's
exactly, they're
too
gonna get
much.
exhausted.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Game
I'm still
design,
waiting
even
for
on the
yeah,
field.
same
Yeah,
to say
I love
yeah,
it.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, uh, I have a house rule for expeditions, which is I feel like the main theme of what I wanted to talk about, some other things as well, but,
Yeah.
first off, congratulations on expeditions.
Thank
Uh,
you.
now that yes, please show it. I
Right
wanted to
there.
have it in the background. All I have is Wingspan, with me, and I was like, "I don't wanna just have Wingspan on display if we're gonna be talking about expeditions." That box is a monster, man. When I
It
saw it, I was like, "That is huge."
I
You
w
fit a lot of
yeah.
stuff into that box, though, so,
I
it
really
felt
wanted
good
it
to
to be
hold it.
square so you could put it on your shelf or a shelf like that behind you, but, we
Mhm.
couldn't fit everything in the box that way, so,
Well,
we had to make
those
it a little
those
smaller.
games go on top of the shelf.
Yeah, yeah,
So now that your game has, reached a larger population size than a couple of your champions play testing it, not a couple, but you get it. Is there anything
yeah.
that you've learned about expeditions, anything that's come to light now that you have a larger sample size?
Yeah, that's a great question. We do a lot of play testing leading up to the release of a game, and
Mhm.
we do a lot of data analysis. But you're right. I always learn things from seeing what the general public thinks and
Yeah,
feels about a game when they
yeah.
play it. And one of the questions that you prompted me with is probably the thing that I've heard the most that that people are wanting, or some people are feeling in like a 4 to 5 player game in particular, that the fourth and fifth players have a slight disadvantage because there's often a rush to get workers early in the game.
Mhm.
And that was something that really didn't come up all that much in playtesting, and I
Mm.
I don't exactly know why. Definitely more of our playtests are at lower player counts. It's easier to get a group of 2 or 3
Of
together to
course.
playtest than a group of 4 or 5. So it may have been that. Um, I think there's a little bit of groupthink going on too in terms of valuing the workers over other aspects of the game. But groupthink is important for me as a designer when I figure out what a game needs to be and what I can do with expansions. So
Yeah.
that's something that I've heard a lot. Probably the most common thing that I've heard. And I know you had some thoughts about this. What's your have you played a game with 4 or 5 players, and have you tried to implement anything differently than what I put in the game?
So my first game was 5 players. My first game
Yeah.
was 5 players, and that was kinda like the rule teach where I just got absolutely smoked. It's hard to think about combos when you're just learning the game,
Yeah.
but, it was there was a little bit of time in between my turn. Um, so yeah, there was a little bit of time in between, but the time in between turns that allowed me to, like, think about my next move, which the more I get familiar with the game, the more I feel like that could turn into impatience. But
Mm,
my first few games, I'm like, "Yeah, I could go there. I hope they don't go there. I hope they
yeah.
don't do this." So, yeah, so the time in between turns is definitely something to consider. Um, but in regards to I agree with you regarding the group think and, uh, um, I could see where people could kind of hop on,
Mhm.
but then again, there is the aspect of having loads of useless workers in front of you. So
Right.
when I heard that, I'm always trying to think of the counter argument, and there's also, like I learned in a little bit of game design, you should play as if you're only going for your workers, and then you should play a game where you're only going for locations. You should play a
Yeah.
game where you're only trying to kill the, what's the 20
The
guy? Tarkovsky? What's
Tarkovsky, yeah.
Tarkovsky?
Yeah.
Um, and I didn't. I played as the ship, I played as the ship meeple, and I didn't go
Yeah.
for workers, and I won that game. So it's not as I think people should definitely hold back a little bit with like, it's not completely broken. So,
I don't think it's completely broken either. But
yeah,
I still respect the perception that that's something that I've tried to learn as a designer. That sometimes even though something might be mathematically correct, or I know from
yeah,
our experience that there are many strategic paths in the game, if it feels like there's only one, then that feeling is important, and um, I need to acknowledge that in the core game or in an expansion. And so I have some
sure.
things that I'm working with in the expansion, which is in the second wave of blind playtesting right now. I have one
Great.
specific thing that I think will help with that perception. I don't want to give it away yet, but I'm aware of it, and I have stuff
Don't
I'm going
give
to
it
put together
away.
for
Yeah, for sure.
it.
Not this early. We're not even at Gen Con yet. You haven't even
Yeah.
sold the original game.
Yeah,
Expeditions will be at Gen Con. Is
that's
that
right.
still fair to say? Everything is shipping well now?
Oh yeah, yeah. Everything's shipping great. We did sell more ironclad editions. That's the one that I have right here. That's the one with
Yep.
the metal mechs than we had in the first wave of the first printing. But we have more coming in September, and we have
Great.
some at Gen Con. I won't personally be at Gen Con, but my team will be there. They have a big booth there where they're helping to show
Yeah,
people how to play. Show
you're
people.
a
Yeah,
GeekWay to the West guy.
I'm a Geekway to the West guy. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So what drives you there besides proximity versus not showing up? I mean, Gen Con is huge, right? And your
yeah.
booth, I went there last year. You've got a large space. So are there other
Yeah.
decisions besides proximity that you kind of stay away from other conventions?
Definitely, there are, yeah. Well, not conventions in general, because I do love Geekway, and proximity, you're right, is a big factor,
Yeah.
and it's very convenient for me to drive 20, 30 minutes to go to Geekway and then come
Yeah.
home and uh, do do all the other things I need to do every day. Um, but I also I don't I found in my old age maybe that I don't love crowds. I don't get excited about crowds. Like I haven't been to St. Louis as a new soccer team. I should
Yeah.
probably have gone to a game by now because I've heard they're a lot of fun, but I don't
Yep.
get excited about going to a 20,000 person stadium. I'd rather watch it on TV. And so the same kind of goes with the Gen Con. I'm fascinated by it. I want to know all the games that are released. I want to know people are excited about. I want to play the games,
Yeah.
but I don't get excited about the crowds. And so I have
Sure.
team members who love that aspect of it, and they're very good at it. So I encourage them to do it. What about
Yeah.
you? Have
Back.
you found there's certain conventions that you like or dislike? Or yeah.
Oh, well, I've got 2 kids under the age of
Mm,
5, so, like I say, "Ivy, Gen Con next year, pen it out," and I'm going, and,
uh,
I won't go to a single convention until then, Uh, I'll work on that though in the future. But Gen
Yeah,
Con is my one that I will splurge on. But then like you said, like getting older, I got kids and I'm in my 30s now, and like I'm ready to go to bed at like
cool.
1 maybe, 1 o'clock, and I'm regretting it. So yeah, I don't know how much I can do with that, but that's cool. And I heard GeekWay is a little bit more like play games, and Gen Con is a little bit more like um uh display what's going on your Kickstarter. There's the
Yeah,
there's the table salesman, and then there's the dice salesman, and then there's it's a little bit more of a performance. It's a huge gathering.
I think that's a perfect way of saying it. Yeah. Whereas Geekway is really just a big game night. It's a game night with nearly 2,000 people, but it's
Yeah.
spaced out enough that it somehow ends up feeling intimate. Um, and I just go and play games for 4 days with anyone who wants to play games with me, and I love that.
Yeah. There is a section of Gen Con that has a ballroom where you can put the little
Yeah.
flag up, and if you're looking for a
Yeah.
player, so I really appreciate that. So like now that I learned about that, I've only been to Gen Con once.
Uh-huh.
And now that I know about that, I'm going like right there, and I'm gonna meet new people and just kind of have a good time just playing games.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I want to go back to not focusing on the necessarily the worker
Yeah.
discussion that we had, but I am curious because I do like going to your website, and then there's the errata link. Is
Yes.
there any errata that is coming to expeditions?
So there are on the FAQ, there are a few clarifications, no actual
Okay.
rule changes, but a few clarifications, things I could have worded a little bit better in the rule book or clear. The one thing that was in the prototype that did not make it into the final game exactly as it was in the prototype was there's one location in the north, a location
Yeah.
tile, where there should be 8 or more corruption value on that
Mhm.
tile, and it ended up somehow being printed with 5 or more.
Printed
Something
with
that I missed.
5,
A
yeah.
lot of my graphic designer missed it. Our entire oversight team missed it. Fortunately, the good news is that there's nothing in the rules that say that a location in the north can't have that
Yeah.
number instead of a different location, but that wasn't the intention. And so I am planning in the expansion to have a little tile in there that replaces that tile if people
A
want it.
whoopsie
But it's
tile.
also a whoopsie tile, yeah.
Yeah.
But it also is fine for anyone who like. It's not one of those things where you have to buy the expansion to get it. It is perfectly fine to play it as the 5, or just know that in the north there's supposed to be 8, and you can play with the 8.
Sure.
Either works.
Tournament legal.
Yeah,
Tournament legal.
tournament legal. Yeah,
I've got to
yeah,
say the tiles, and I don't know if this was the Easter egg you were shooting for. First off, love the flex
yeah.
capacitor, which is why I included that
I'm glad you got that.
Back to
Yeah,
the Future. But
yeah.
and I might be wrong here, but you have one tile in the game. I think it's saving the lumberjack,
Okay.
and it's a person standing outside of this large dark circle. Is that a Kokiri Forest Ocarina of Time reference? Like,
Oh,
remember Nintendo 64
yeah.
Zelda? And you would, in the intro of the game, you would walk through these like carved out pieces of wood to the next area, and it was like black, and then you walked through it, and you would see like the next
Right.
part of the zone. I've got to ask, is that what that was, or did my mind just like make that up?
I hope that you were correct. It is not something that I asked Jakob to put in there, but it is
Okay.
completely possible because he loves Easter eggs. And so that,
Oh,
like, if
so
you look
you
at the
gave him
sideboard,
you
no.
gave him creative freedom to do his own Easter eggs.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I asked for a few of
Oh,
them.
that's
Like, there's the
exciting.
card with my cats on it. I asked
Yep,
him for
yep,
that.
saw the cats.
But for the most part, he just kind of runs with Easter eggs. So that might be
Okay.
it. I'm going to have to ask him about that. That's a great question.
You've gotta let me know. Reach
Okay.
out to him and ask
Yeah.
if it's like a Kokiri Forest
Okay.
Easter egg.
Uh,
Um, so
that's
I
cool.
have one more question uh, about expeditions,
Yeah.
and it was focused on uh, a future expansion, because when we reviewed, and I want to talk about your philosophy on reviews in a minute as well, but for future expansions, I really feel like this is a game that has generated a lot of hype because of the Scythe sequel,
Yeah.
and we labeled our video, "This is not Scythe 2.0."
Yeah.
You had to have thought in naming this, like, oh boy, people may accidentally mislead themselves into thinking this is a Scythe uh, remake or a spiritual successor or something like that. What was the consideration in making this a Scythe universe game?
Oh, that's a good question. Because the consideration at the beginning was really, as a designer, I wanted to revisit this universe and see if
Yeah.
Jakob wanted to expand it in some way. If he wanted to tell a different story, because we kind of concluded the story of Scythe,
Hmm.
but was there? It's a big world. Is there other things happening? What happens after Scythe? What do these people do, and where do they go? So that was just kind of branching from my curiosity and from what I had heard from Scythe fans that they wanted something else in that world.
Yeah.
Um, I did a poll actually where I asked them, like, if I design something else in this world, would you prefer that it be a deck building game in the world of Scythe, or a Scythe dueling game? Or I think I mentioned like Scythe with dice, like a dice version of Scythe. And by far the top response was a deck building game in the Scythe world. Didn't
Okay.
end up actually being that because I couldn't figure out how to get deck building in the world. But we had that kind
Sure.
of Concordia system that is akin to deck building, but not exactly deck building.
Yeah. This is the first game where I've had a hand not in my hand.
A hand out in
And
your
then
hand, yeah.
I'm moving it over. So
Yeah.
it still has that deck building feel. You're definitely right. And I appreciate the
Yeah.
freedom. Like you have a market incorporated into the map, but you can
Right.
also just draw from the deck, which I appreciate as well.
Yeah.
Um, so with that, you, I'm sure in your what 10 plus years now of probably longer, right? What? How long?
Feel right about that. Yeah,
Geez, yeah, about
our
10 plus
10th
years.
anniversary was last year, the Stonemaier
Yeah.
10th. Yeah,
There has had to be a time, just because we're all human here, where you were
yeah,
led to watching reviews and reading the comments, and I'm gonna guess that that has been something that you've indulged in, at least in your 10-year career. But you know how
yeah.
toxic the internet can be when you have people without uh, repercussion of their words. They can say some pretty hurtful things. What uh, what was your philosophy behind not watching reviews and like how did you come to that philosophy where you can send out games to people like myself and channels like the Board Game Rundown
Yeah.
and just say, hey, thanks for the review. I'm not going to watch it, and I hope we can keep doing business together.
Yeah, it's definitely. I'm glad that you phrased it that way because you're right. Like, people are not binary, and I've changed my methods and my philosophies over the years as I've
Hmm.
learned things about myself and about the industry. And yeah, for at least I don't know the exact when I made the change exactly. It was probably around 5 years ago, but that
Okay.
means for the first 5 or 6 years, I would watch and read and consume reviews about our games, games that I designed or just games that we published that weren't of my design. And I definitely learned some things from them. I think
Yeah.
reviewers have a wonderful perspective. I like that they're willing to share their perspectives, but there were certainly a few instances where I would consume a review or watch a review, and um, whether the review is negative or they just didn't get the game, whatever it was, I would find myself having what I think is a very human response, but not a good one in terms of unbiased third party reviews, where I would be like, "Oh, this reviewer just doesn't like our games. I'm not going to send them review copies anymore."
Yeah. Yeah.
And after thinking that a few times, I kind of put a check on myself because I was like, "Why am I sending out review copies if I'm just going to not send them out to people who don't like our games? Like that's not helpful for people who are consuming these reviews. I want them to get an honest impression so they're informed when they decide whether or not to buy one of our games." And so that's when I came to that realization. I was like, I need to take this human element out of it. I need to separate the idea of me liking Andrew or not, or me liking what you have to say about our games. I need to separate that and just let you say what you want to say, and me not know what that is. And whenever you send me a link for one of your reviews, I just take that link and I throw it up on our website so anyone can learn from your perspective. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of the evolution of it. It probably happened around 4 or 5 years ago.
Interesting. Yeah, it's so hard, right? Because you could be a fan of somebody and not be a fan of all of their work. And there is such
Right.
a kind of like you said, like a binary. It's so polarizing, especially with the groupthink that we spoke about earlier. Like
Yeah.
the last thing I would want somebody to think is like, oh, the worker mechanic is broken in expeditions. This game sucks. It's like, well, hold on. Like
Yeah.
that it doesn't have to be just like this or that. Like there's a lot of nuance in the details and each player's experience, right? So
Right.
yeah, no, I really appreciate that. And I mean, and I've had I mean, I'm a review channel, right? So I have to
Yeah.
review things. Uh there have been times where, well, yeah, would I play this Stonemaier game again? Sure. If somebody really wanted to experience all of what Stonemaier Games has to offer, but, like, would I play it again? Would I, like, bring it off the shelf, just because I funded the highest, backer,
Right.
edition on Kickstarter? Well, maybe not, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Like, you can have
Yeah.
games that uh I'm not a huge diehard fan of, but,
Right.
like, your reputation and your quality has shown through parts that I disagree with, and, like, we're all human, we're all gonna have different parts that we like and dislike. The camps, the tribalism, like, it's like, can't you just
Yeah.
appreciate a business as a whole, a company as a whole? So
I hope
and
so.
you said,
Yeah.
let's go back to 4 or 5 years ago, that's around Wingspan time-ish, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's about the time that Wingspan released,
Yeah,
and,
that might be a coincidence, or yeah, there are definitely a lot of reviews about Wingspan, a lot of opinions tossed around. So, and I was, yeah, that might have been right around the right time. And I think it
sure.
actually it goes the other way too. Like I think, and you can let me know your thoughts on this, because one of the
Mhm,
benefits I think of this method is that reviewers hopefully feel more freedom to be completely open about their opinions, that they don't
mhm.
feel like I am looking over their shoulder. Not that anyone really thinks about that, but I think maybe every now and then you're like, oh, I will this publisher send me another game if I post this negative review, or this review where it's more negative than positive?
Yeah,
I, I don't know. I want reviewers to feel free to share their truly unbiased opinions, because you are
mhm.
serving your audience. You're not there to serve me as the publisher. You're serving
Yeah,
your viewers.
yeah.
So yeah.
Well, I mean, I watched a video in which they were almost kinda calling out other channels for highly praising your game, and they were like, "There are some serious problems with expeditions that I feel need to be addressed, either in an errata or, something in the future." And I think that is good for I think it's good for everybody.
Mhm.
Who in any realm of a profession can say that their product is perfect, can say that that it doesn't need to be refined, and, like, I think as long as the intentions are in the right spot, right? I think
Mhm.
we can sharpen one another. And the only way you're gonna make a better product, Jamie, is from hearing it from a large sample size of people who care about your product and who are willing to tell you the hard things, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's an old proverb like wounds from a friend beat a kiss from the enemy. Instead of having a channel that, just says, "Oh, this is a Stonemaier game and we want to keep having him send us stuff." We give it a 9.5.
Yeah.
Um being honest, it should make you a better game designer as you progress throughout your journey. And I think that's the best thing that can happen. Now, I think you'll receive that critique in other areas besides reviews, right? You'll
Right.
hear it from your playtesters and your champions and uh,
And just on Board
your
Game Geek and the Facebook, like I
Board
see
Game
it in
Geek.
the
You're
internet in
very
general.
involved
Yeah.
on Board Game Geek, which I appreciate. And
Yeah.
that's a little bit better of a space because it's feel like it's a little bit more of a community rather opposed to YouTube where it's a bunch of like individual channels kind of holding off on doing their own thing. There's
Yeah.
more of a community feel on Board Game Geek. But
And hopefully there's
uh,
still mutual respect, I think, within the reviewer community. That's one reviewer's opinion might be different than whoever that reviewer is that felt like they wanted to bring some things to light. I don't know if it's entirely fair for them to criticize other reviewers for having a different opinion. Like
yeah,
that's the point of reviewers and being people and having different opinions, and
being
probably
people
playing
with
at different
different
player counts.
opinions, right?
Right. Yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So I want to bring up the Wingspan
Yeah.
era of time because one of my final questions. I want to be respectful of your time here. Um, but excuse me. I went to my local Meijer, in the
Oh yeah.
Midwest. Meijer is like just like a supermarket, I guess you could say. Do you have a Meijer down there? Meijer might reach down there. There might be a couple.
I don't think we have them in St. Louis, but I'm from Virginia, so whenever I drive from Virginia to St. Louis or vice versa, I definitely stop in
Gotcha.
some towns that have them, especially in Kentucky. I know I've seen some in
Okay.
Kentucky. Yeah.
Gotcha. Meyer started up in Grand Rapids, Michigan, so
Okay.
it's kind of slowly trickling down. But when I
Yeah.
saw Wingspan at Meyer, I was like, I almost felt like a sense of pride. I was like, Jamey did it, man. The guys at Stonemaier Games, they did it. Like, I was so happy to see your game in what I would say is it's not Target, it's not
Mhm.
Barnes& and Noble, both of which have really good, I would say, like, board game areas, but
Yeah.
Meijer, it felt like it was like kinda like a Walmart almost. Uh,
Yeah.
how how do you go about getting your games to these large superstores and out of the, like, local game store, uh, culture? Like, how did you push that to a larger market? I was so impressed.
Yeah. Well, part of it is having the right distributors that are willing to
Okay,
sell to places that they don't normally sell to. Um, so that's part of it. We work with a few different distributors that consider those types of options. Part of it is having a game like Wingspan that if any customer asked a store repeatedly, "Can I get this here?" The store might start to seek a way to find it to
gotcha.
supply that game. We found that with like wild bird stores that sell like birding supplies. I think it's called
Really?
Wild Birds Unlimited, something like that. Like
And
that
you have
happened.
Wingspan at bird stores?
Oh yeah, yeah. That was
Oh,
an
wow.
early one, and so we had to find the distributor that serves bird stores because we had never sold to a birding store distributor before. And
That's
part of it too
wild.
is that I have a wonderful person on my team, a guy named Alex, who is our director of sales and logistics, and he finds new places to sell our games like that. So I don't know if that was him. I don't remember exactly when we got into Meyer. That might have been when he was already here. It might have been a little bit before
Well, I've gotta say, like, keep him around because the fact that I
that.
saw Wingspan in Meyer, like, that shocked me, and, I was like, "Man, like, what is next? Like, what is next for Stonemaier?" They're infiltrating the area of the supermarkets that have, like, Yahtzee and bicycle decks of cards, and then you've got Wingspan. I was like, "Wow, that is just crazy." I have a community question for you, if you don't mind,
Yeah, yeah, of
just
course.
to wrap it up here. Um, what was the and this is from our local board game group, Discord. Uh, was there ever a point in your board game, in like Stonemeier's journey where you wanted to like kind of just wrap it up, kind of call it
Mm.
quits? Was there ever a point where it was too much stress or like what was the hardest part of your career as a businessman for Stonemaier Games?
Yeah, that's a tough question because I love what I do. I feel very
Yeah.
fortunate that I have this opportunity to hopefully bring joy to tabletops worldwide. Um, After actually in the expeditions world, after when Scythe was fulfilling, we funded it on Kickstarter in November 2015.
Mhm.
We fulfilled it in late spring, early summer of 2016, right on schedule, and it just ended up being an oddly difficult summer. Which surprised me because it ended up being one of our biggest games of all time.
Yeah,
People
yeah.
were enjoying it out of the gate. We were fulfilling early, um, but there was kind of a crush of passion, I think, from Kickstarter backers that manifested in some interesting ways. Even though like it was early, even though it was the game that they had backed, and even more, I think, for many people. Um, just seeing some interesting responses to that. I won't go into it too much here, but it was a lot. It was a lot to handle, and I look back on that summer, and I've never really felt depression in my life, but
Yeah.
I think that summer it ended up kind of crushing me in a way that is very odd to me because everything was going well, and yet this I was having these tough feelings, and so
Wow. You would have been
that
like
yeah
Willy Wonka if you
yeah,
released Scythe and then you
and
just
then they walked away.
stopped, and then
Yeah,
just Stonemaier just stopped. That would have been
yeah.
crazy, man.
So it was one of those times. I don't know if I fully considered quitting, but I was like, "How? Like, what am I feeling right now? What is this thing, and how is this happening? How do I want to proceed?" And
Yeah.
it led to some great things for the company. That was when we ended up moving away from Kickstarter, and has been very good for the company and very good, I think for our customers too. So
Yeah.
out of a tough time came, I think, something that was good, and I'm very fortunate to still be here. But that's a wonderful question. I think that's a good question to ask for me to ask on an ongoing basis, really.
Sure. I mean,
Yeah.
it's all about like growing as a person, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you could be a board gaming giant, but if you're not, checking yourself and making sure that you're okay, you
Yeah.
know, uh, that's a yeah, I agree. That is a good question we should always be asking ourselves.
Yeah.
Speaking of the Scythe Killer, have you played Chaos Order yet? Because that's
I
like my
know.
clickbait title. I don't like the clickbait titles, but have you it's a grinder. It's like a 4-hour game, so I
Yeah.
would not expect you to have brought it to the table. But have you tried that game yet? I think I brought it to you in one of your live Facebook chat groups as well.
Yeah. I have not played it yet. I'm still so
Okay.
curious.
I
Yeah.
may come to GeekWay for the West, and if you see me with
Oh yeah.
Chaos
I'll play
Order,
it with you.
we're
Absolutely.
gonna yep, okay. If you
That'll
were
be
coming to
awesome.
Gen Con, I'd toss you in one of those, ballrooms, and we'd sit down for a few hours. It'd be a good time.
That would be great.
But, yeah, anyway, we're gonna wrap it up here. Jamey, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to seeing the reception, for expeditions and more at Gen Con. There's a lot more that you're going to have for sale at Gen Con. Honestly, if people aren't interested in expeditions, I highly recommend your 2-player Wingspan expansion. That was fantastic, and I tout it as the best expansion that you've released yet. So
Oh,
well
cool.
done. You've every Wingspan expansion continues to impress me. So uh, well done there. And
Thanks.
I look forward to enjoying even more of your content. I know a lot of people in my community feel the same way. So,
Thank you, Andrew. And I hope you keep
yeah,
up the great work with Board Game Rundown. I really enjoy your channel.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, we will keep in touch. And until next time, everybody else, thank you for watching. And this is Andrew and Jamey and the Board Game Rundown. So, take care, everybody. Have a nice day.